few years ago, I was invited to speak at a diversity conference at an all-girls school. So in this large auditorium, there's 300 young girls there in high school, their teachers, administrators, parents, and they're all chatting away. I walk in, I'm wearing my dhoti, my kurta, and every one of them becomes silent. And just staring at every step that I'm taking. Wondering, is he going to speak? Is he going to sit down? Why is he here? So I sat down, and I was introduced. And I shared with all of the people there. Even though you've not shared a single word with me, every one of you is judging me right now. My next statement was, how many of you are in high school? So a lot of people at their hand. How many of you live in Pittsburgh? More people at their hand. How many of you are human beings? Everyone had their hand up. Right? My point that I was sharing with all of the people there, as long as we use our eyes, we will live by sight. We will live with differences. That's what our focus will be. But when we start to live with our intellect, where ideals are held, where dreams are had, we will start to live with vision. Where differences are functional, but the oneness is fundamental. And I went on to share further thoughts at this diversity conference with one specific example in my life. I was walking to my car, and a girl came up to me and said, "Do you have any money?" She wasn't mugging me, she was just asking. And my mind is so conditioned that I was laughing to myself. People don't ask me for money, I ask people for money in the work that I do. And I said no, and as she's about to turn away, she says, "You have some paint on your forehead." I said, "It's not paint, it's sandalwood paste. Why do you wear it?" And I shared with her, in India, back in the day, whenever someone burned their skin, they would put sandalwood paste on. It's a cooling agent. And so the idea is you put it on your forehead to keep your mind cool. The idea, it's a reminder that when I use these eyes, you're a girl, I'm a boy, you're shorter, I'm taller. But when I use my ideal, when I use vision, that you and I are alive for the same reason. We're both humans. She crosses her arms like this and says, "No, we're not married." Giving me this attitude that we can't be one because we're not married. And I laughed again when she said it, in my mind, not at her. When my wife and I got married, our priest forgot to sign the marriage certificate. So in the eyes of Ontario, for 6 months, we were illegally living together. But legal is like using sight. Just because you wear a wedding ring, does that make you married? Or not wearing a wedding ring, does that make you not married? Love is not by sight. Love is with vision. Not the eyes and separation, but the intellect and unity. And you're all laughing, you're all, I think, nodding, because you know this is logical. I'm not sharing anything that you don't know already. So for the next little while, I'm going to explore the logic of spirituality. Really, what I'm going to do is remind you of what you already know. That was one of the points of why people come here. It's that confirmation. You already think like this. We just need to be supported. And I'm very appreciative of the few hours that I've been here at how much all of you think. And I'll speak a lot about that. One of my teachers, Swami Tejomaina, he said it's good people with good intentions that cause the problems in the world. Good people with good intentions, but they're not thinking. And that's what causes the problems in the world. Really, what we see in the news, that's only a small percentage of people who are doing whatever offends us. but it's on the day-to-day basis in our schools, in our hospitals, in our government offices, where all of this is incubated. So we'll think a lot about thinking. And as was shared, there was a much more significant speaker that was invited to speak to all of you today. But Swami Advayananda, his visa did not get processed in time to be here. So he and I have a solid relationship, and he said, you speak today. So that's why I'm here. And I'm grateful to him and to all of you. In the YouTube video that we watched today, we saw a lot of Earth, a lot of beautiful images of Earth. Recently, I took 20 young adults, and we lived in RVs and traveled from Calgary to Jasper and back. And our only emphasis was contemplating, reading, and hiking. And the images we saw in these national parks of Banff and Jasper are unimaginable. We were pushed into silence at how beautiful Earth is. Do you all agree? When people say north of Toronto, what does that include? Aurelia, Barrie. My wife and I traveled, it took us 5 days to get out of Ontario. It's so large and amazing. But we don't know anything past Aurelia or Toronto. Barrie. Earth is amazing, Ontario is amazing. Niagara Falls is amazing. I was born and raised and I live in Niagara Falls. And our bodies are amazing also. The composition of the earth, the minerals, the proportions is the same as this body, isn't it? In regards to water, in regards to matter. So if we think more deeply, the macro and the micro are the same. So when I don't take care of the environment, really I'm not taking care of myself. And if I do take care of myself, then I'm also taking care of the environment, yes. Macro and micro, the same. I want you to think about your parents right now, whether they're alive or not. As you grew up, as you became more aware of your personality, did you discover that you were sort of becoming one of your parents? I know it's sad, but you did. Become one of your parents physically, socially. My wife tells me on a regular basis that you are more like your father every day. And I think she means that well. See, my parents are the cause. I'm the effect. Naturally, there's going to be a connection between the cause and the effect, between the past and the present. The present doesn't just spontaneously happen. It is a result of the past. So there too, there's not a separation between myself, my parents, my grandparents. If we think, we'll see that this is a lineage. And not just my family, but all of us are part of this lineage. Swami Chinmayananda, a leader in our time, he shared that there's 3 laws to the logic of spirituality. You tell me what these laws are. I'll introduce them. You fill in the blank. Law number 1. Every effect has a cause. Spiritually, yes. Scientifically, yes or no?
Yes.
Every effect has a cause. If you go deep into the origins of that effect. Number 2. Multiple effects can have a single cause. Multiple effects. What is this called? Kurta. What is this called? Dhoti. I'm wearing socks, I'm wearing an undershirt. So multiple effects, but what is their cause? Cotton. Right? And number 3. If the cause is removed, so is the effect. All of the people wearing gold right now. If the gold is removed from your earrings, do you still have earrings then? If the gold is removed. Your neck necklaces, are they still there? No. Gold is a cause. The earring and necklace is the effect. In Sanatana Dharma, in this vision, every one of us is born to the same parent. We call that parent the original parent. The father, the mother, together. And we have so many traditions that remind us of that. If you go to a temple and you want to offer worship to the original parent, you know that icon, the priest will ask you, what is your gotra? Which means, what is your lineage? And then you state that your lineage is this great being, which it simply is, my lineage is God. I am a son, I'm a daughter of God. And now if you went, you'd say the same thing. And so would that person, and so would that person. Doesn't that mean we're all part of the same family? And another tradition is, when an infant is born, when that infant is 4 months old, the parents take them to the temple for the first time. And they show them the icon of their original parent. And there tends to be a huge platform in front of this icon, and then they leave the infant there. And they turn around and they walk away. And then someone who's monitoring this brings that infant back to the parent. It's not an exchange program. Your infant is coming back to you. But it's a very deep tradition. Number one, for the infant, that your only purpose in life is to be with your original parent, to live this divine life. And more importantly, the message for the parents is, this is not your child. You are a custodian, you are a caretaker, you are a well-wisher, but this child is divine. So the amount of love, selflessness, patience that has to exude from us, knowing that this is the original parent's child, makes such a difference with these traditions, with this vision. There are significant social ramifications when you and I think about our connectivity. Not just to each other, but with the environment also. When we were traveling through the Canadian Rockies, we had families of caribou, families of elk that were the same distance between me and this desk over here. And they had no fear of us, because we had no fear of them. They can sense them. How many of you are scared of dogs? Dogs that are not yours, how about that? Right, then many more hands go. I remember reading the newspaper a few years ago. An autistic boy lost his way from home. And he ended up in this forest. This was happening in Kentucky. And so they had 150 volunteers scour this forest near this boy's home. And they heard these barkings that were coming from this corner of the forest. And when they got there, they saw this pack of wild dogs that had surrounded this boy and were barking to draw attention to the boy. Now I think if I were there, I would immediately try to protect myself, with a stick or run. Fear, and then what would happen to those dogs? They would have fear too. But that young boy, he didn't have any fear of those dogs, so they didn't have fear of him. They helped each other out. And it's because those dogs weren't using their eyes, nor was that boy. Vision, living by an ideal. We all do live by vision, but its application is very limited. One person's trash is another person's. Are we not seeing the same thing with our eyes? But our vision is different, correct? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. One person's obstacle is another person's opportunity. And I'll give you one more. Wherever there is change, there will be challenge. Do you agree?
Yes.
So my teacher has shared. Infancy comes and goes. Childhood comes and goes. Teenagehood comes and goes. Adulthood comes and goes. Senior age comes and stays. It just becomes deeper.
Doesn't last that long.
You just get deeper and deeper into it, correct? Now think, between being a child and a teenager, there's so much change. Physically, socially, academically. It's a very confusing period. They're frustrated, they rebel against their parents. Where there's change, there will be challenges. You're all smiling right now because the sun is outside. Now, we saw a lot of snow falling right now. That's change. We have to adapt to that. It's a challenge. And if you know the purpose of that challenge, it's called training. Challenge plus purpose is called training. Challenge minus purpose is called, what's another word for challenge?
Drudgery.
Drudgery? Our group was talking about this. Problem. If I don't know the purpose of a challenge, I call it a problem. We all face challenges, but we all don't face problems. And it's not external, it is our vision. Sociologists say that human beings have two fundamental fears. Fear number one, fear of death. Number two, public speaking. Fear of death, we understand. There's a lot of talk about fight and flight syndrome. Fear of public speaking. Some people, you can't give them the mic. They will fight tooth and nail not to have that mic in front of them. Some people, you can't take the mic away from them. They will fight tooth and nail to hold that microphone. I was in one conference where like Fred touched him on the shoulder saying, you know, time is flowing. So one person put this sign up, 1 minute left. And the organizer said, I paid for this conference, I'll speak as long as I want. You see, public speaking is not intrinsically fearful. It is your contact with public speaking that causes the fear or not. And if you think about it more deeply, we don't fear public speaking. If you are one of those people that is afraid of public speaking, you're wrong. I'm politely saying you're wrong. There's actually something much deeper than that. Every creature, past, present, future, other than those who have realized their potential, realized that they are sons and daughters of the infinite, have three fears. Fear number one, fear of death. What's fear number two? Sure, let's hear it. Fear of? Worthiness. Close, but you gotta go deeper than that.
Rejection. Isolation.
Deeper than that. Deeper than that. Because some people like isolation. I've spent 168 hours in a room locked from the outside by myself. Voluntarily, not jail. And I loved it. I would like to go for 20 days if I have that opportunity.
Loneliness?
Deeper.
Not knowing.
Deeper. There we go. Fear of the unknown. Fear of the unknown is number two. Have all of you seen the movie Cool Runnings?
Yes.
With John Candy, the Jamaican bobsled team in Calgary? There's a very beautiful message and saying in one of the scenes. You have 4 black racers in this bobsled, about to go down the hill for the first time. All the other athletes are laughing at them. Go back to Jamaica, you don't belong here. One of the athletes says, it seems like people here don't like us. What does the other bobsledder say? People are afraid of what's different. Who do you fear the least? Yourself. Because it's the most known. Who do you fear the most? Whom you don't know. And number 3, third fear. Fear of, what does SAD stand for? Seasonal affective disorder. I need the sun to make me happy, and if the sun is not there, I feel sad. The third fear is fear of sorrow. Fear of isolation is only because it may cause sorrow. Worthiness, sorrow. Now here's a very important subject that we all must think about in this education framework. People fear failure because it makes them sad. But if someone understands that failure is part of living, then you delete the word sorrow, then there's no fear of failure. And if there's no fear of failure, you start to try more, isn't it? Isn't our education system based on excellence and not effort? But someone will always be smarter, faster, better looking. And when that day comes, I become sad. But if it's based on effort, as long as I try my best, then I'm happy. So you see these 3 fears that I'm talking about. Fear of death and the unknown and sorrow. They're teaching us that no circumstance, no being is intrinsically fearful. It's simply our relationship with that being, with that circumstance. It is to empower us that we can feel differently if we think differently. We have to think more deeply. In Sanatana Dharma, we have 4 pursuits of life. They're called Purusharthas. Purusha means human. Artha means what is meaningful to humans. And the lowest pursuit of a human being is for pleasure. Higher than that is possession. Higher than that is position. And the highest pursuit in life for any human being is, what do we all, not even want, what do we all need? Peace. You can call it freedom, joy, it doesn't matter, but peace. What good is pleasure if it doesn't last? My teacher shared, built into pleasure is pain. Suppose Shen, they take us out to a buffet lunch afterwards. Next year, I'm hinting at them. Next year they should take us to a buffet lunch, okay? We go in there, first plate, some pleasure. Second plate, even more pleasure. Third plate, pleasure fades. But we still go in for the 4th plate too, correct? Now what does it turn into? Pain. And so at 2 o'clock, that's why I'm finishing my speaking early. At 2 o'clock when the next speaker comes to speak, what's everyone doing? Sleeping. But peace. Only peace can create peace. Our education system, our corporations, our government, right now we're thinking in the short term. Pleasure, possession, position. And it wasn't always like this. By thinking in the long term, we will all feel what we need. And I have so many worldly examples of that. I'll give you some of them. I had read, and Kevin can obviously correct me, in First Nation tradition, and I'm generalizing here also. Before one tree was cut down, they planted 10. That way there would always be an abundance in the environment rather than a shortage. Now think, isn't that long-term thinking? Supporting the environment, supporting myself. I was reading USA Today a few years ago, and on the front page they had America, the map, and happy faces in every state. And in that, they were sharing that GDP, gross domestic product, is not the right measure for the development of a nation. that they should change it to the HDI, the Human Development Index, or the Happiness Development Index. Because what good are bigger buildings or wider roads if it's not leading to peace, which is what people need? And so they said they should change this. And they listed the happiest countries in the world. And consistently, number one is Denmark. I've been to Denmark. I would support that. They're physically healthy, they're mentally healthy. The next three keep changing. But they're also in the Scandinavian countries. Number 5, Canada. Something we should be very proud of. And I love making this statement in America. What's America at? 11. Their GDP is bigger, their army is bigger, they have more university students, and you can keep on putting that quantity there. But is that leading to the quality of life? Long-term thinking. And to bring this to us right now, by a show of hand, how many of you believe in a higher power? Okay. Next question. How many of you this past month have experienced some sort of worry? Okay. A lot of liars in the room who don't put their hand up. How many of you in the past month have experienced some sort of fear? The organizers especially, worry and fear. Now, isn't it fascinating that the same believers in the higher, the same believers in God, are the same people who worry, the same people who have fear? And see how I started this with the original parent, and we are all children of that original parent. If there is an infant in this room and I'm the parent of this infant, as long as I can see that infant, I will not allow any harm to come to that infant. Parents, yes? Grandparents? As soon as our line of sight is broken, then worry, maybe fear. Now we have studied, intellectually, that the higher power is infinite. Mathematically, what numbers are exclusive of infinity? Negative numbers? Fractions? Prime numbers? No, it's all part of infinity. Spatially, what's exclusive of infinity? America, Greenland, space. Everything is included in infinity. That means you and I, too. That means this higher power, which we go like this, is actually here, is actually there, is actually here. So is worry very logical? I'm sorry, I thought I had turned it to airplane mode, but I haven't. Is worry very logical? See, I'm not worried right now. Is fear very logical? My teacher always shared that more important than what to think is how to think. What to think is always context-based. How to think is universal. And this is where the word mantra comes from. You've all heard of the word mantra before? I chanted Om. Om is a mantra. Mantra means mananam trayate. Mananam means to be thought about. Trayate, to cross over. If you think, you will cross over fear. But if you don't think, there will always be fear. My wife and I went to see the movie Paranormal Activity. How many of you have seen that? It's a horror movie. It's pretty scary. We came home and we both went to sleep. But actually only I went to sleep. Because in the middle of the night, my wife shakes me. Vivek, are you sleeping? Illogical question, isn't it? I was sleeping. How come you're not sleeping? I'm scared. I keep thinking about the movie. So I told her, you should remember something positive. Pray. And then I went back to sleep. It's easy to give advice, right? And the next morning, when we both woke up, I said, how did you sleep after? And she said, fine. You know that proverb, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. If you have a fear thought, what will you suffer from? Fear. But if you don't have a fear thought, how can you suffer from fear if it's not even, the source isn't there? We can change simply by thinking more. I'll share a story to bring even more light to this. There was a gentleman who worked for a company that transported frozen food amongst cities. This story I'd heard in India, so I'm going to use that reference. This person is in Madras. Now we call that city Chennai. And he's on the compartments, and he's checking, this is here, that is here, this is here. And he turns around to leave that train, but the door is stuck. So he's trying to manipulate the handle to open it, but it's stuck. So now he's scared. So he starts kicking and screaming, but these are back in the day, so steam engines. Very loud, no one heard it. This train leaves, arrives in Delhi. The company is there waiting for their food. They open that compartment, and when they open the compartment, this man is curled up on the floor, shivering, turning blue. So they immediately call hospital, they take him away, but they have to call the police too, in case this was foul play. So the police come, they're checking the log, checking fingerprints, checking the refrigeration. And one of those inspectors says, stop the inspection. Everyone said, what? There's no foul play here. This person is freezing. Not because of the refrigeration, because it's not working. This person is freezing because he thought he was going to freeze. And this is what manifests. This is the software, this is the hardware. Can you give a virus to a printer, to the keys on a laptop? No, the virus goes to the software. We have to learn how to think. This happens when you live in an ashram. The monastery that's mentioned there that I lived in for 25 months. Have you all been to an ashram before? What does ashram mean? In English it's monastery. What does it mean? Shram means effort. When you put that prefix a, the opposite happens. So many people go to the ashram to sleep, to enjoy living there. But that's not how Sanskrit works. Ashram actually means where you have to put extraordinary effort into yourself. And when you do, your education gets complete. I was born, raised, and live in Niagara Falls, Canada. My parents sent my sisters and I to a Catholic school because it was the closest one to our home. They were working all the time, so we had to walk back and forth, and that was the closest school. I went to a public high school, I shifted to London, I went to the Ivy School of Business, and after that I did commercial real estate for a few years. In between, I studied in the Czech Republic for half a year. I did online classes at the university in St. Catharines. So I've gone to school for 20 years in my lifetime. After doing commercial real estate for a few years, and I started living in our ashram, our monastery, you know what we were told on the first day? So 60 students out of 750 who have applied. Our teacher comes to the front and says, for the next 2 years, you will be given what you need. And if you're not given it, you don't need it. I started having heart palpitations. All they gave us was a bag and an umbrella, 2 pairs of clothes, that's it. And here I'm coming from Niagara Falls, I have a duvet, I sleep in the basement, I can drive a Jeep, etc., etc. 7 acres of land with a security guard, no internet, no laptop, no passport, no restaurants, no friends. that was there was me and my mind. And when you're not given an environment to be extrovert, you start to study the mind much more and how powerful it is. You know, whatever happens in the macro happens in the micro. So we think, our cities are very lustful. The same happens in the monastery. Greed here, greed there. Anger there, anger here and there. But here, whenever we have those vices, we can escape, right? My brother-in-law works for CAMH, the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. And he was showing me his campus. They have a section for people who are addicted to alcohol. They have a section for people who are addicted to drugs. I said, do you have a section for people who are addicted to work? It's another addiction, isn't it? Some people escape through alcohol, some through drugs. Some people don't want to come home. So, keep working. It's much easier to boss people around outside of the house than inside of the house, isn't it? So they keep working. I realized that very quickly that whatever anger is in my personality, impatience, I can't escape it. So I have two choices: to suffer or to sublimate. And I'm grateful for that opportunity to have tried to sublimate these vices. And here's where I would like to leave some final thoughts on the logic of spirituality about change. Okay. In one discourse, the theme of the discourse was we can, we must, we will. And I felt it was inspiring, so at the end I said, we can! And everyone said, we can! I said, we must! Everyone said, we must. I said, we will! And one person in the front goes, we wish. Please don't be like that. Be like that. My wife and I, we drive around 40,000 kilometers a year to travel to the different places in the world to share thoughts like this. And one of my favorite parts of driving is seeing church signs. I find church signs to be so funny and educative. So one church sign I saw was, we all make mistakes. And they spelled mistake wrong. Another one said, this is around Earth Day, save planet Earth. It's the only planet with chocolate. What a creative way of emphasizing Earth Day. And the one that I want to highlight here is, Thanksgiving is not a day. Thanksgiving is a vision. If Thanksgiving is a day, if Earth Day is a day, it's actually problematic because we justify the 364.25 days every 4 years that we don't live with gratitude or don't live with discipline. But that one day we do. And it's short-term thinking. Spirituality, Vedanta, what I'm trying to share. Spirituality is not an action. It is the vision behind all actions. It is not an action. If I go to the local temple and the whole time I'm distracted, I haven't done anything well. But if I'm at Tim Hortons buying a coffee and I'm really using my vision that you and I look different, but the reason we're alive is the same, I've grown more through that experience in this marketplace and in a place of worship. Now, if you understand and agree with this, going to school, going to work, being married, every moment is an opportunity to practice spirituality. You know, to go from belief to faith. Belief is intellectual. We believe in God. Faith is in our heart, head, heart. It happens through reflection. When I reflect that on some of the thoughts that I've shared right now, I start to practice spirituality. Swami Chinmayananda says, the best way to live life, follow the advice you give to others. We'd all be enlightened if we did that. This vision is logical. And I've used a few Sanskrit words which I've defined, and I think everyone can realize that it's within our scope of understanding. Now, moving forward, I've shared a lot of philosophy. I'm going to focus on practice for a few minutes. You can only share what you have. Do you agree? If you don't have whatever, you can't share that. If my water bottle is empty and you ask me for water, can I share that? No. Now, what is it that we all need? What do we all need? Peace. Correct. In our group, we were talking about various needs, and I was reminded to grade 11 biology. What did we all learn in grade 11 biology about needs? Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Remember that? So we have this rainbow-colored pyramid. What's at the bottom? What kind of needs? Physiological. Water, air, etc. Next pyramid? Grade 11 was decades. Safety. Safety. Like if there's a major storm outside, you may be hearing me, but you're not listening to me because we're concerned about safety. Right? We feel the same way about coffee. Without coffee, you may be hearing me, but not listening to me. Higher than that?
Belonging.
Belonging, correct. Familial needs. Higher than that?
Self-actualization.
Esteem. Esteem. Having confidence. And the highest need?
Self-actualization.
Actualization. Correct. Now, whenever we think of this pyramid, we think of it going this way and outside, correct? Actually, this pyramid goes inside. Physiological needs are for the body, right? Safety, belonging, esteem, and then actualization. This pyramid is not down up, it's outside in. This is about becoming more of an inward-looking person, because when you become a more inward-looking person, you can give more outside. You and I can only share peace when we are peaceful. And if you're sharing peace but you're not peaceful, you know who we become then? We're the people who try to make everyone like us. Now, all of the people who have worked with people, can you make everyone like you? And if you're trying, how are you feeling right now? Tired? Cranky? Right? I read a very important report, which you're going to love. I've read this in many places. How many times does a typical child laugh a day? Give me some numbers. A typical child. 35.
500.
500. One more number. 50,000. Whoa! I wish I was that child. The typical child laughs 300 times a day. And imagine, 10 of those hours are sleeping, let's say. So they laugh once a minute, hypothetically. How many times a day do you laugh? How many times a day does a typical adult laugh? 10. 3. Anyone else? Price is right. You can go down to 1 if you want. None. I was in one place and the person said, do negative numbers count? The typical adult laughs 15 times a day. So every 20 times a child laughs, we give one fake gentle laugh, you know? Like a gentle person laugh. I have to laugh to make a business deal. So as we grow up outwardly, we grow down inwardly. My teacher has always shared best service you can do is to mind the mind and mind your own business. Mind your mind and mind your own business. What do? Exact opposite. What did this person say yesterday about this person? And I don't realize the negativity that I'm indulging in. So here's how I suggest we move forward with bringing this vision to all our actions. This is just a suggestion. Number one, we should engage in more introspection. Introspection. And how to practice that? Spend more time by yourself. There's a major difference between loneliness and aloneness. Loneliness, I can be with a lot of people and still be alone. Aloneness, I can be by myself and feel very fine. So many people engage in hiding behind a screen, and not just kids with their video games, us with laptops, us with phones, us with television, because we're missing out on our potential, because we're not looking at our potential. Where's the grass the greenest? Where you water it. That's where it's greenest, isn't it? If I look at your life is great. My life is not so great. But if I look at my own life, my life is great too. Introspection. Spend time with yourself. Even if you dislike it in the beginning, we dislike everything in the beginning. Right? When we first engage in some sort of sport, we don't like it, but you learn to like it. Humans adapt. And Swami Chinmayananda says, if you don't enjoy your own company, why do you inflict it upon others? So, introspection. Study yourself. The software. Number two, detection. Detection. When you start to spend time with yourself, start to detect how the mind works. When it's sunny, how does mind work? Around this person, how does mind work? You know, like a science experiment. You change the space, the time, the temperature. So study the mind like an experiment. Have you heard of the terminology called hangry? Hangry is when you're hungry and you become angry. So some of you are slowly on your way to hangry. Every child comes home hangry. You're the worst parents, you know. You don't look after me, and you just give them one peanut butter and jelly sandwich, one apple, and all of a sudden, gone. See, study when the mind is cramped. Why is it cramped? Someone had once asked me, can you bring people back to life? And I said no, but I explained that there's 3 types of death. Medical, biological, and philosophical, which is beyond the scope of this discourse. The next question was, can you read people's minds? And I leaned in close to this man and said, yes. And that person was so frightened. But I explained myself, not to be creepy about it. I said, since 2005, 100 hours a week, all I do is study my own mind. I don't speak for other people. I speak for myself, and they put a microphone in front of me. I drive, I study my mind. Our minds are not different. So the more I know my mind, the more I know another person's mind. So now let's think about service again. The more you know yourself, the more you can serve others in a better way, isn't it? Detection. Number 3. In the city of Kitchener, there's 400,000 people that live here, 397 in the metro area. In this conference, I counted 66 people outside. Now maybe a few more have come. Why is it that out of 400,000 people, 80 have come here? Why not more? Because the third part is called negation. People don't want to see what's in their mind. They don't want to see how much impatience, malice, vengefulness there is. Isn't it? When we're with ourselves, that's what scares us. When you go to a fancy hotel, there's 2 mirrors in the bathroom. One mirror is the one on the wall, and what's the other mirror? Makeup mirror. Very scary mirror. Because it amplifies what's over here. So what do? Immediately put a towel on that, on that mirror. Because when you look up close, I have this scar here, this blemish here, there's hair here. When we find those vices, we should be ashamed of them. We should despise them. If we're proud of our vices, they're just going to grow. Sometimes I meet people and they say, I'm an angry person, and they're yelling as they're saying this. Or in younger people, they'll say, I'm a very jealous partner. That just shows that you don't have faith in yourself or your partner. It's not something to be proud of. But when we realize that this is destroying ourselves and others, we start to negate it. And the ideal way to negate it. How many of you have seen the movie Inception? There's a very powerful scene where Sato is with Arthur in the helicopter, and he says, I don't want you to think of elephants. Then he asks him, what are you thinking of? Elephants! This mind, this software doesn't know the language of don't. So when you say to someone, don't be angry, don't they get more angry? Don't speed, they speed up. So to shift from negation to substitution, whatever we negate, whatever we're ashamed of, we have to practice the opposite. And every one of us has 6 enemies that steal our peace. And if we don't have peace, we can't share peace. All of us have these 6 enemies. In one place I was sharing this and I asked everyone, who are your enemies? One girl put her hand up. Priya, Maria, Deepa. She started naming all of these people. Those are not, they could be our enemies, but our real enemies are inside of ourselves. Enemy number 1, desire. Desire is our first enemy. What is the opposite of desire? To be content. Yes. Be content. Next enemy, anger. What is the opposite of anger? Happiness. Happiness is the opposite to every negativity, but I'm looking for something more specific. Acceptance. Yes, acceptance. Who do you accept the most? Yourself. Who do you get angry at the least? Yourself. Who do you get angry at the most? The family member that's here with you right now, isn't it? We have such high expectations of our family, which is why we get angry. It's such a contradiction. Practice acceptance. Number 3, greed. What is the opposite of greed?
Generosity.
Generosity. Generosity. I'll tell you a funny story. How many of you have been to an Indian train station? Awesome. It is a haven for activity. My friend had come to visit me from Niagara Falls while I was studying. And this person has traveled a lot of unique experiences like concerts and parties. When he got to that train station, he was like a little kid. He didn't know what was going on. He was looking for me to protect him in this environment. So one of my uncles, he was at this Indian train station, and he saw this sign that said, beware pickpocketers. And we all have one of those uncles who has to be heard. So he had to tell someone about how much he appreciates this sign. So he put in so much effort to find that station manager to tell him that I really like the idea of putting that sign outside. And the station manager was thinking, what sign are you talking about? He says, I'll show you. So they go outside and they're looking at this sign. And that station manager said, we never put that sign up. So they both got to talking and realized the pickpocketers put that sign up. Because as soon as you see beware pickpocketers, where do your hands go? If you have money, right? My purse, my wallet. But if you don't have money, you walk freely. So they're able to see who has money. These pickpocketers, they're geniuses. Greed makes us insecure. That's the point I'm trying to share here. So how to let go of that insecurity? Be generous. And we live in an awesome country where the more generous you are, the less taxes you have to pay. Many nations don't allow that. They don't encourage it in the way that Canada does. Number 4 is delusion. Delusion, I can simplify, is irresponsibility. How to, if we want to be ashamed of irresponsibility, what is the substitute for that? Accountability is good. What else? Knowledge. What is the low point of the week for a typical male? Definitely not Friday. Not Wednesday either. Monday mornings. Low point of the week for a typical male. NPR taught me this, okay? This is not my own social experiment. National Public Radio in the States. And what is the low point of the week for a typical female? It's different.
Sunday night.
Sunday night. Friday evening. Both are attending to the responsibilities outside of the home, but tends to be, NPR said this, not Vivek, that on Friday evening then, the typical female has to tend to the responsibilities at home also. And what's fascinating for all of the males in the room, typically, that Monday morning is coming 50 times a year. Suppose you do this for 30 years, correct? 1,500 Monday mornings where a tear comes down your eye as you're driving to work. When you know it's coming, right? And for the females, 52 times a year for however many years. That same tear. If we have knowledge that this is our responsibility, then we're not irresponsible. I find it to be so humorous that in the States, they have huge graduation parties from high school. And back in the day, it's because you went off to the army then, and you may not come home. But now that doesn't happen. I tell those high school students, you're expected to graduate from high school. Right? Why are we celebrating? You should applaud me because I'm breathing. Because I'm digesting right now. To have the knowledge that this is your responsibility. Number 5 is arrogance. What is a substitute for arrogance? Humility, good. More specific. Good. Good. Good, good. Acknowledgement. Remember someone, I think Fred had said, I did this. He was joking about that. But for this conference to happen, we needed the school, we needed the city, we needed the country. Correct? Acknowledging all of the beings involved. How can I say I did it? It can only be we did it, or he did it, the original parent. And finally, the 6th enemy that is universal amongst all of us is jealousy. The green disease. What is the substitute for jealousy?
Love.
Acceptance, good.
Love.
Love.
Unconditional.
Appreciation.
Unconditional.
Whatever you're jealous of, appreciate that. And if you're strong enough, go tell that person. If I'm jealous of you about a certain reason, I should go and say that you did a wonderful job. Or this is a really great skill set. And all of that poison comes out, doesn't it? What was the first enemy?
Desire.
Desire. Substitute? Contentment. Second, anger. Substitute?
Acceptance.
Third,
Greed.
substitute?
Generosity.
Generosity. Fourth, delusion. Substitute?
Knowledge.
Fifth, arrogance. Substitute? Acknowledgement. And sixth, jealousy. Substitute? Appreciation. And so that leads us to the fifth and final way to move forward with this vision, and that is emancipation. If you don't have any enemies, aren't you free? And if you're free inside, you become free outside, and specifically, you become free to help others become free also, which is everyone's fundamental need. It's not a want, it is a need. The logic of spirituality is that spirituality is the vision behind all action. To develop this vision, introspection, detection, negation, substitution, and emancipation. Gratitude to all of you for patiently listening to all that was shared, and I hope it was meaningful for you. It certainly has been for me, and to all of our organizers for this opportunity.
Nick, thank you so much on behalf of all of us. I'm just going to throw it open. Any questions? Any questions?
I'm just going back to the comment here, infinitely, constantly, and unconditionally happy. With all that you've done, how often are you happy?
Never. I've read that a typical healthy human being requires, please hear this thoroughly, a typical healthy human being, not someone too young or too old or not well, requires how many hours of sleep? You're not going to want to hear this, but take a guess.
7,
8, 7,
7.5.
4, 5.5. Psychologists will say otherwise, sociologists will say otherwise, but I don't feel psychologists and sociologists take into account the training of the potential of the mind. 5.5 hours, okay? Why is it that you and I sleep more than we need to? Escape, good. Cold too, yes, also.
Boredom.
We don't have a better reason to wake up. If you have a better reason to wake up, why would you sleep? Tomorrow morning, instead of meditation, suppose we all have to meet at the Toronto airport to go to the Bahamas. We'll go straight to the airport now, right? Let's start now. So when you have purpose, real purpose, performance comes with that. And the performance is that joy. I love what I do. I sleep 5.5 hours. I take 80 flights a year, drive 40,000 kilometers. I spend 250 days a year outside of Canada. In other words, a lot of physical and mental exertion, and I love it. Because I know that the more that I study, the more I can share, and both of these, studying and sharing, studying myself, facilitates that independent joy. When I ask people why they're happy, they give me a reason. That reason came into their life, and that reason will leave their life. But if I ask you why you're happy, and you say it's my nature, it's my potential, it's my lineage, then that's emancipation. So I feel I'm on my way there. I hope that was an abstract.
When you're in an ashram and you spend 20 days on your own, what is the process that the mind goes to psychologically, what happens to the mind in that case?
Sure. So in this case, I actually spent 25 months in an ashram. But the specific example I think you're referring to is when I spent a week in a room by myself. When I got to this room, it's probably 15 feet this way and 15 feet this way. The most stunning aspect of this room was that there was no windows. There was no windows and no fan. This is in Gujarat, in India, where it's 110 degrees outside, and so it's 120 degrees. I said outside, right? 120 degrees inside. The first day is just so physically challenging. I had to wake up so many times because the sweat was getting in my eyes and burning my eyes. So whether you're in that solitude or in an ashram in general, it's the physical aspect that is most difficult when you start because there's no stimulation. It's uncomfortable according to our standards. But when you adapt to that, then it shifts to the mind. On day 2 when I was in solitude, I was okay physically, but mentally, my thoughts were so loud. And they're loud now too, but I'm distracted by it, whatever. But there's no distractions. So it's so loud, and I do a lot of work with those who are mentally ill also. And I can't empathize with someone who suffers from depression or schizophrenia. I cannot. I can sympathize, but I've not gone through what they've gone through. But I know there's suffering visually and when they speak to me. So that's what happens in a very relative way on day 2 in the ashram. Where your mind, you realize you have a mind in a very hard way. Day 3, and this is the key, if you do not learn to observe the mind, in other words, step away from the mind, introspect, as I mentioned, the mind will destroy you. It will destroy any sort of peace that one has. But if you can learn to observe the mind, then you realize that you can direct the mind. And then there's freedom. On day 7, when that manager of that ashram came and knocked on the door, I thought that if they never open this door again, but they keep giving me food, and they kept on giving me books in a language I didn't read. I wish they gave me English books. I could have stayed there forever. I have Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Everything is checked, the rest is my responsibility, and I was doing it. So that's what should be done in an ashram. You should work harder than you've ever worked before, not relax more than we've ever relaxed before, which is what some of our ashrams have become like now. So you decide how much time.
No, we'll take 2 more questions.
Go for it.
So what prompted you to choose this path after real estate?
Yes, because of real estate. When people ask me this question, I like to joke with them, so I lean in close to them and say, the girl I loved broke up with me. And they love hearing that because they expect some sort of depressing story of why you went into this. That didn't happen. I married the girl I was dating at the time. We all have pieces to our puzzle. Actually, we have all of the pieces to our puzzle. Some of those pieces are travel and wealth and accomplishments, and family, whatever your puzzle piece is called. And we've actually made the puzzle, but it's still not complete. Isn't it? And you know this most early in the morning when you've not put on any of the costumes that you put on, and late at night when we've taken off all of the costumes we wear. Husband, worker, male even. Right? When I'm lying down and I want to sleep, I don't identify with the gender specifically. That's when we think, what was the purpose of today? What will be the purpose of today? And I know we all feel that. And I was sharing with Christine that we all have questions, but we don't follow the questions, so we don't get answers. And we keep experimenting a little bit here and a little bit there. It's called spiritual shopping. You know, that's what we do. The more honest you are, introspection, detection, negation. That's the only way where you come to accept that I am not independently joyous, and if I don't change now, I will continue to be dependently joyous. So at a young age, I was not ready to learn to pretend to smile like everyone else that I was meeting. People who have great degrees and great careers, but they don't sleep well at night. They live with fear. And that's why I said, the highest pursuit is peace. So through the grace of the original parent and my parents, I was able to stop being extrovert and start being inward looking. Fair enough? So it's that lack of purpose.
One last question, I think. Where's lunch?
One last please.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
He paid for the conference,
I
right?
hate to-
How do you talk logically, logical spirituality to an illogical mind?
I've tried for the last hour.
You obviously need another hour.
1 point. Did you all hear the question?
No.
How do you speak logically to an illogical mind? I hope you heard the other questions that were asked though.
That's a
Yeah.
brilliant question.
One is to have the humility to know that you can't change people. You cannot change people, especially adults who are more fixed in their ways. I'm sharing with Stephen who left. My observation is if you're from 0 to 40, you come to such forums to learn. 41 and over, you come to unlearn. And it's far harder to unlearn than it is to learn. So that's why I said to have the humility that I cannot change another person. And so all I'm going to do is share and plant a seed. And if that seed grows, great. And if that seed doesn't grow, great. Farmer can't force a seed to grow, they can only plant seeds. So humility is number 1. Number 2 is to not just speak it, but to live it. So here the word professor. Acharya in its fullest meaning means the one who leads by example. Acharya is not someone who is an academic. It is someone who has faith in this, not just believes in this. When Sheila and I, my wife's name is Sheila, we had taken a first aid, AED, CPR training because we're in a lot of public places. We want to help if something happens. This gentleman is talking about heart disease. This causes heart disease. That causes heart disease. Smoking causes heart disease. After 2 hours of training, there's a pause. We all go outside. What's he doing? Smoking away. He's paid to say that. So you have to have faith in what you're trying to share with another person. And remember, spirituality is the most intimate subject. Politics people fight over, but spirituality is the closest. It's closer than your own partner, your own body. So you have to have faith in it. And number 3 is to relate to that person in an understandable way. See, if I come here and start talking from the Upanishads and using all of these Sanskrit terms, that shows that really I don't know the subject and you obviously aren't going to get the subject. But if I can try to relate and we can get examples together about Canada, about nature, etc., it makes more sense then. Logic is you're getting your foot in the door. You don't kick the door open. You just get your foot in the door, and then that person has to open the rest of the door themselves. So by relating to them in an understandable way, you crack the door open. They have to open the rest of the door. Finally, in this field, logic is an impediment. That's why I said it's a foot in the door. After that, you have to drop logic and move on faith.
When I said illogical mind, I don't
My answers are still the same. Still the same.
Your conference or not, I'm cutting you off. Kevin, Kevin's got a little something for you.
Oh, I wanted one of those.
Yes. Wants and needs. You have, brother. So we're blessed to have you, and
Yes.
yes, I just wanted to share that there's a bear paw on here. And the first lesson when we go into the wild, into the great unknowns, is that look for the signs of a bear. Because the bear teaches you what to eat and the medicines of the earth. And with the bear paw, if you were to, as we're dressing a bear, as we're hunting, once the paw and the head is gone, the body is of a human being. So the teaching of the bear is the mothering and the nurturing and the protection of the children. And the father is the strength of the solitude, with as brother was sharing. And the paw, if you were to take the medicine out of the claws of the bear, that is the medicine of the earth. So everything brother is sharing is of the bear, and so he'll be on a good journey. So, yes.
Hey, I wanted to ask you about your pin, the colors on your pin.
Oh, by the way, yes, this will be, I'll share this later today, but this is exactly where we are as we're coming through our morning and our afternoon and evening and night. These are unity pins, and I'll share them with you as how we come together. And it's a beautiful day, and thank you for sharing it. It's an honor.
Thank you so much. I don't know if you noticed when they hug. Oh, one more little thing for you up here. Thank you, Vicki.
Just also on behalf of Shannon and the people here, just thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thank you.
I don't know if you noticed when they hugged, and Kevin, they hug, not this way, heart to heart, and I thought that was it's just a lovely touch. We have, first of all,